welcome to today's Friday Facebook session. It's Friday again. We're here today to talk about Twitter. Is Twitter dead? So a couple of years ago, there was this massive rumor that Twitter was going to die and that nobody would be using it. And to be fair, they did lose almost half of their users in a really short time. But since then, there have been the word on the street is that Twitter is making a comeback, and in 2020 and 2021, Twitter is expected to have its best 2 years for quite a few years. So, got some Twitter facts and figures for you here. Right now, there are 340 million Twitter users in the world, and 15 million of those are in the UK. About 80% of Twitter users are affluent millennials. 40% of them are between the ages of 18 and 29, and 30% of them are between the ages of 30 and 49. So if that is your target demographic as a business, then your audience are on Twitter. That's where they are spending time. So if you're not there, it might be a little bit remiss. But that's what we're here to talk about today. So, Chloe, what's your name and where do you come from?
Hello, I'm Chloe. I'm Growtraffic's digital marketing executive. Originally from the lovely little town called Bacup.
Yeah.
And this is my first Facebook Live.
So yeah, this is Chloe's first Facebook Live. We've been doing these for quite a few months now, and this is Chloe's first one. I might have
been avoiding them.
Yeah. But yay, welcome Chloe to your first Facebook. Simon Daly, what's your name and where'd you come from?
Simon Daly from Growtraffic.
All right, marvellous. There we go. Exciting stuff in your red t-shirt today. Very red.
I know, I couldn't find a shirt.
You couldn't find a shirt?
I couldn't find a shirt.
Yeah,
but
your wife.
The shirt that I was looking for is actually hung up in front of me. I've just noticed it.
Right, okay, yeah. All right. Fair enough. Right, okay.
Right,
next. Okay.
You're going to go do shirt I was looking for.
Do a quick change then, are you?
Maybe.
What does your wife do with her time? She'll be right lazy
as well. I'm really underprepared for this one.
This is poor, very poor. Yeah, piss poor performance, by the way. Okay, first question to each of you. Chloe, do you like Twitter?
I love Twitter. It's my favourite app of all time. It's the first thing I check when I wake up in the morning, and the last thing I check before I go to bed at night. It's just great. Just everything that's happening in the world is first on Twitter. It's happening first on Twitter.
Yeah.
Whether it's like the president having a meltdown, or Fleetwood Mac going live, or grime battles, whatever it is, it's happening first on Twitter before it's happening anywhere else.
And
it's great.
Is that why you like Twitter better than
big fan?
Is that why you like it better than Facebook, for example?
Yeah, but also because it's not flooded with ads and just with shit. Like Instagram as well lately, so flooded with ads, and Facebook. And there's like that older generation on Facebook in particular that aren't quite sure what they're doing on social media, and just share everything they see. So it's just full of useless stuff, whereas Twitter is so good for getting people's like genuine opinion on things. And seeing people talk about real things that are happening in the world. It's great.
I think that is one of the
things
about it. No, I think you're right, because you just don't get that news sharing thing. I mean, I was watching the news last night, and they were talking about, the president had said this on Twitter, and then whilst the press conference was going on, Grant Shapps has posted this on Twitter, and honestly, no other platform gets mentioned so much in the news or in newspapers or whatever, does it? So Twitter is the place where news is broadcast. As you say, it's the place where things happen first, much more than anywhere else. Yeah. And I think as well, like Instagram,
you hear it from like the horse's mouth.
Yes, exactly that. There's no other platform where people can say directly what they are thinking and broadcast it out to the world. And for me as well, I think Instagram is it's just too fake for me, really fake. And I can't be doing with all the posing and the insincerity and all the rest of it. Whereas I think you're right, Twitter is literally just people just spewing shit and putting it out on the internet, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's why it's beautiful.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah. Dali, what do you think? Do you like Twitter?
I like Twitter. I don't think I like it as much as I used to.
You used to love it, didn't you? Though Twitter used to be your first like primary choice, didn't it?
It did, but I think part of the reason for that was that I could post from Twitter to Facebook and get it out on Instagram, and you can't do that. I could also post to multiple accounts, and you can't do that now.
Mm. But okay, well, oh, Brian's watching. Hiya, Brian. He says he loves Insta. I just think it's a bit fake. I used to like it, but now I just think it's too posed. But yeah, Twitter. I've had a look.
I do like it now. I think it.
Go on.
Oh, sorry, I was going to say, I think it all depends on who you follow. So I have gone through more than once and like unfollowed a ton of businesses, and I've started to follow accounts, small businesses, local accounts, stuff like that.
Is this on Instagram that we're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ads are still ruining what could be a really good app.
Yeah, and I think Facebook,
and you don't seem to get them on Twitter.
Facebook is a bit the same as well now. I was looking through my Facebook feed this morning, and it was like I've been trying to tell it what kind of ads I want to see, because obviously it decides listening into your conversations what it's going to show you. So recently I've had a lot of pillows for crick necks and a lot of makeup. I don't know why it thinks I'm obsessed with makeup, but it does. But yeah, Twitter, there just isn't that big volume, is there? You seem to get much more genuine content. So yeah, but anyway, oh yeah, I did like Twitter, and I've gone through periods where I've loved it, periods where I've come off it. I'm not a particularly big user of it at the moment. I think the thing that I struggle with Twitter is it's so instant that you have to be on it quite often, and I just don't have the time necessarily to invest in it. Whereas with Facebook, you can leave it a bit longer, and then it's all right if you're responding to something. You know, a tweet only has an 18-minute lifespan, so if you're not on it constantly, you lose it, don't you? Whereas with Facebook, you've got time to come back to things, I think. Okay, right. First question then, for the uninitiated.
I thought the first question is, do we like Twitter?
Yeah, well, those are my introduction questions. Now we're coming into the content of the session properly. I would like to know, what is Twitter? Simon Daly, give me an explanation of what Twitter is.
Twitter is a social media platform that uses microblogging for its posts.
Okay. Yeah. Chloe, anything to add?
No, I've never heard of it being described as microblogging before, but it's basically just a place to like you said, spew your thoughts. Just write down what you think.
I made that up then, Chloe. I think it sounds good though.
It does sound good.
Why is Twitter different from any other social media platform? Either of you answer that.
Why is it different from any other social media platform?
I think
we've got
it doesn't try and sell you as much as the others. Like Instagram's very salesy, even Facebook now is very salesy. But Facebook, I'd say, is probably more of a community social media, whereas Twitter isn't as local, in my opinion. The communities are big, especially in business. There's always, no matter what industry you're in, there's a Twitter community for it, and that's amazing for business. But if you're using it personally, there's not as much as a local community.
I think the whole premise of it having a very constrained character limit is the crucial thing, isn't it? It's what gives it all its character. It constrains what can be said on there, and I think it also means that people have to, people who are actively engaged with the platform, they have to tweet more, so they have to be more active, put more posts out. Because of the limit to what you can say in a specific tweet. It makes people more succinct as well, doesn't it?
And I think, to be honest, this is something that they play on, isn't it? You know, Facebook is hyper local, and they are going for that. You know, they want that the community is the thing that Facebook is pushing, and they want you to form communities on Facebook that reflect what is happening in your local community. Whereas Twitter is quite open about the fact that it is global, and really, there is no other platform where you can say something and it has the potential to be seen by anybody anywhere around the world. You know, if you think about LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, people will only see your content if they are friends with you or friend of a friend with you. You know, content, the way the algorithms work, the content kind of goes in this sort of domino effect, doesn't it? Whereas with Twitter, genuinely, you know, the president of the United States could read your tweet, and nobody has to be your friend or be following you or whatever. So it had that global potential is the thing that's unique about Twitter, in my opinion.
I think you get that global potential on Instagram as well. You know, so that's there as well. You're right. You're a bit more locked in with Facebook, but yeah, there's a very different type of content that goes out on Instagram, which does a similar thing with pictures, really, doesn't it, than that Twitter does with words.
I think that's the difference, isn't it?
Yeah, on my Twitter, Ed.
Yeah, go on.
On my Twitter, there's kind of like different edges to it. So there's the like serious Twitter where it's politicians and really influential people like telling people their opinion, and it's really informative, and it's such an important social media platform for that. And then there's this flip side of it, which is just like people probably more my age who are just on there for a laugh, and it is one of the funniest social media platforms. Like, I'll be in bed at night and I'll be shaking the whole bed, like crying, and Tom will be like, "Oh, you shut up," and I'll just find a tweet and it'll set me off. But it is honestly like every meme you see on Facebook comes from Twitter. Like every funny GIF, it starts on Twitter. There's like these two sides to it, and in a way, I think it connects like the younger generation with you know, these serious issues that are going on in the world, for sure, because not many people are going to get up in the morning and read the news, but they are going to go on Twitter.
Yeah.
And it does filter through to this younger generation that are coming up.
Do you think it is, because you are in your 20s, you know, do you think it is now primarily the platform where your generation is? Because I know, you know, a lot of the kids the Snapchat was massive for a while, wasn't it? And the kids now seem to mostly be on TikTok. And by kids, I mean, like, you know, the teeny bopper kids are on TikTok. Do you think that people in their 20s mainly are now Twitter? That's the primary platform.
Yeah, between Twitter and Instagram, for sure. I know a lot of them have come off Facebook, and that we're kind of leaving that to the older generation, like you. And then the younger ones are on Snapchat and TikTok, and yeah, it is. I'd say Twitter's the main one. But like Dali said, people either love it or
but it's interesting, isn't it? Because in a way, you think, right, thinking about how you, because we always say to people when we're talking to our clients, you know, don't try and do everything in terms of social media unless you've got somebody whose job it is, or you've got the resources. You know, if you're just your average small to medium business, don't try and do everything, because you'll just end up doing everything crap. Whereas if you put your time and effort into one, maybe two platforms and learn to do those well, then that's a much better use of your time and your resources. So pick where your audience are and choose the platform that's best for your business and your audience. And in a way, you think, right, Instagram is kind of the platform where you know, so if I had a product that was aimed at people between 20 and 30, for example, I would think I would be on Instagram for pictures and Twitter for words. Would you agree with that, Chloe?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And also Twitter for like trend. If you want, a lot of them do competitions because it's so easy to get something. Well, it's not easy to get something trending, but it's easier to get something trending on Twitter than it is on any other social media platform.
I think that's a really important point, actually. We need to kind of emphasize that again. The rewards where where there's levels, and Facebook is one of the hardest ones. You have to work really fucking hard to get any return from Facebook. LinkedIn is more generous, so LinkedIn is it's invested in getting smaller companies and smaller people more attention. But Twitter, it can be, if you get Twitter right, you can go viral, or at least reach several 100,000 people much quicker and much more easier than you could on any other platform. Dali, what were you going to say?
I was just thinking about what you just said. That I don't think it's necessarily true that just because you use Twitter, it's easier to get some viral content out there and make it work. I think you're right in what you said to start off with, that you've got to put the right content out on the right platform for the right audience, and select, be selective about the type of content that you put out there, because I think you can, and we sometimes are guilty of this as well. For if a client doesn't have a huge budget and they just want to do some activity on X amount of social media platforms, and they want us to share the same content across the board. Obviously, we'll do that, but we kind of know that we're just targeting one social media platform. We're creating content for one platform and then distributing it across multiple ones. And I think that when the content that we create doesn't isn't orientated towards that platform, you can tell there's limited engagement with it. And there's and also, I think the other thing is that Twitter, like all social media platforms, I suppose, but Twitter, you just got to be engaged. You've got to be on there actually engaging with the people that follow you and that you follow, and people in the industry, in order for them to engage back with you, engage with the content that you share. So I don't think it's as easy as saying you can definitely get you can get greater reach on Twitter because it's easy to go viral. I think the best platform that I've ever experienced a kind of just accidental random viral post was on LinkedIn. You don't think about LinkedIn as being a platform for posts to go mental on.
I mean, no. LinkedIn is very generous. I don't think either of us was saying necessarily it was easy to do it. We were just saying sometimes for the amount of effort you put in, you can get a better reward on Twitter in terms of the reach you might get. But you're right. It's not. We're not trying to say it's an easy platform and post one tweet and all of a sudden you'll be going viral and it'll be around the world, because that is not how it works. They changed the Twitter algorithm. Was it last year or the year before now? Because Twitter did just show everything chronologically, same way that LinkedIn and Facebook right at the very beginning did as well. They showed everything chronologically, and eventually there was too much and there were too many people and too much content, and it was just getting lost. So they introduced the sorting algorithm, which now sorts out what your feed looks like, and they prioritize it by recency. But they also do prioritize it by the amount that you use the platform and the amount of followers and interaction and stuff that you get. So if you are just going on to Twitter once a week, for example, and you post one post, it's not going to get seen because the algorithms are not going to prioritize that content. Whereas if you are constantly on Twitter and you're interacting with people and you're posting stuff and you're liking and you're retweeting, then the algorithms will show you content to more people. Obviously, that they want people on their platform, so they reward time spent on the platform just as much as content. So it's a fallacy, I think, to not to con people, but to say you can just go on and post something and you might go viral, because actually you do still have to put the time and effort in. How long do you spend on Twitter, Chloe, do you reckon? Be honest.
To be honest, it's not. I don't think I spend as much time as other platforms, because other platforms, especially Instagram, they do that thing where once you start looking at a certain post or a certain type of post, they show you a lot more, and you kind of get sucked into this Instagram hole that you can spend hours in. Whereas Twitter, isn't as much, in my opinion, like that. And I like it that it's not like that. Because it means that once you've looked at something and come away from it, you've still got all this new stuff to look at, and it doesn't just start bombarding you with the same type of stuff. So I don't suppose I'd use it quite as much as the other. I use it as much as the others, but I don't stay on it for as long as the others.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, tweets only have so many minutes, and once I've seen the most recent tweets, I come out of it, and that'll be it. Then I won't go back on it for a few hours because there won't be much more on it for me to see.
I mean, it's a really important thing that they reckon the average lifespan of a tweet is about 18 minutes. But I think that is one thing that a lot of businesses, particularly when they are posting, don't realize. They, clients will say to us, "Oh, just put one a day out." You're like, well, people are only going to see that if they are on Twitter in the next 20 minutes. Really, you need to be putting content out fairly consistently throughout the day if you want people to see it. And it's not that one single Twitter user is never ever going to see all of your content. It's just not going to happen. People will dip in and out and see different bits, and that's how it'll work. So really there's no such thing as too much content.
And I think that's why hashtags are so important on Twitter, because they do prolong the life of your tweet. So I always look at hashtags when I've watched something on TV. So say I watched Sex Education on Netflix. Once I've finished the series, I'll go on to Twitter and search the hashtag and just get a feel for what everyone else thinks about it. And and it's a really entertaining thing to see everyone else's opinion on it. And there'll be tweets from months ago or weeks ago or whatever, but they're still getting traction because of the hashtag.
I did that. I remember.
So yeah, hashtag is super important.
When what was that program called, Broadchurch, when that came on, and I put a tweet on about Broadchurch, and that was like for 3-4 years after people would comment on it and like it, because obviously that was when they were watching it. So yeah, I mean, this is a really important thing actually. I want to talk about hashtags. So people are always saying to me, particularly people that have teenage children, they're always saying like, "Oh, hashtags are dead. Nobody uses hashtags anymore." But actually, if you're a business, if you are doing tweeting as a marketing tool, hashtags are really important, aren't they?
I don't think that.
I think when people say hashtags are dead, it's certainly more for Instagram. No, but people don't see it as like a good thing to put hashtags on Instagram anymore. They kind of see it like you're begging for followers or likes or whatever. But on Twitter, hashtags are much more informative. And they are, like, when you click on the trending page, it is a hashtag that gets something trending. So yeah, Twitter is the main platform for using hashtags, I'd say.
I think what they're really talking about is that we're not allowed to say, hashtag anymore. We're not allowed to say that, because I still say that. I'll be like, "Oh yeah, we're doing something, hashtag IRL," and you see like Leon's like, "Oh my god." Just don't talk.
Poor Leon.
Yeah. Dali, what were you going to say about hashtags?
I was going to say exactly what Chloe said.
All right. Good. There we go then. Right. So, what is Twitter good for? Like, people are always saying, "Oh, I don't need to be on Twitter." I don't think. Well, for some businesses, Twitter is a primary marketing channel. I think for most businesses, it's not going to be that. But what is it good for? Dali, what do you think? Where can Twitter benefit a business?
I think it's great for positioning a business and the individuals within that business. It's good for them engaging with other people in the same industry that they're in. It's some people are able to sell with it. It's good for things like consultants and like industry leaders who are looking to get their name out there, and they get kind of approached on there. But I don't know anyone. I can't think of any businesses that I've worked with over the years that has really been able to monetize Twitter properly. And I think that points to it not being as much of a kind of acquisition channel as an awareness channel. So it's more in the realms of, if you think about kind of traditional marcoms, then it'd be more in the realms of like PR and news than it would be in advertising.
Do you think so? We used to say to, the general kind of rule of thumb when we were advising clients on which platforms to use, we used to say that LinkedIn is for growing your personal reputation within your sector. Facebook is for speaking to your customers, and Twitter is for having a conversation with your industry and growing your reputation as a business within your industry. First question, Dali, is do you think that that's still right? And also, do you think that we should start looking at Twitter less as a marketing / lead generation channel and as more of a reputation management / customer focus channel?
Yeah, I don't think that I'd ever subscribe to the different the way that you've kind of split out the channels there, or the platforms. But because it really does depend where your customers are, doesn't it? So whilst I'm saying now that I can't think of anyone that I've worked with that has been able to really monetize benefit from Twitter, there are businesses out there that get all their leads from Twitter. There are businesses out there for whom that really works. And I would say that there are a lot of people out there where Twitter is the main way that they push their personal brand, for example, and not LinkedIn. And likewise, there are people that like to use LinkedIn and grow their, sorry, that's a dog, like to grow their brand and personal brand that way. So I think it really depends on what you want to achieve, what your objectives are, and who your customers are. I think, I do think of Twitter as being a kind of more a platform that helps you to engage with the discussions and influence the debate that's happening in an industry, and I suppose in the kind of getting general news, getting general things out there as well. Great to distribute content. There are other benefits as well. So these tweets are from time to time, let's put it that way, indexed by Google. So it's also a decent way to perhaps get something to rank quicker. So there are other benefits of using it. Whereas Facebook is a kind of sealed in system. So if you want to think about it from other kind of digital marketing benefits, then equally if you're maybe going for like VC money at some point, you might think to yourself then, how do I create something? How do I create this brand that demonstrates that we've been active in the space for X amount of time, and therefore something like Twitter's could be quite valuable for that in the future.
Okay, Chloe, if you think about the brands and the companies and stuff that you interact with on Twitter, and I'm just purely asking you about your kind of personal use here, do you see, like, would you go and buy off a brand because they've interacted with you on Twitter, or you've seen them on Twitter and they've been funny, or do you think of it more as just our brands are in here having banter, it might be a reputation management thing? How would you perceive it, do you think?
Well, it depends really. I think Twitter is a really, especially for B2C businesses, it's a really good platform for people to talk directly with the customers, more so I'd say than most platforms. And you get a lot of people, especially in my generation, turning to Twitter tagging a brand and saying, asking a question basically about a product or a service, or saying what if it were maybe like a skincare brand saying what will be suited for my skin, you know, asking questions directly to the brand and getting a and when you see the brand responding to individual queries like that on such a large network, that is reassuring. And it just gives this platform for the customer to talk directly to the brand, and for the brand to talk directly back to the customer. And it also it works well if they're introducing like a new product or a new service, or if they want immediate feedback from customers, or you know, the opinion of customers. That it also works quite well for that, especially if they've already got a good following.
Yeah,
it's good for,
so that's where I've seen it work
in that way, isn't it?
It's good for what? Sorry.
For
yeah, it's really good
in that way.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's the first place that I go to have a moan about a brand or a company.
But
yeah, well, that's what I was going to say. That's the downside to it, because you can, like, if I went on Trustpilot and off a business, no one's going to see that unless they look intentionally for reviews for that business. Whereas if I go on Twitter and slag off a business, everyone's going to see that, you know, even if they're not particularly interested in the business.
I was doing some research about this for our social media course, because this is the first objection that businesses will give you. I don't want to be on social media. I don't want to be on Twitter. I don't want people to say negative things about me. And the HubSpot did a massive piece of research around this, and they basically said that if you can be seen to deal with something like that well, people will actually have more respect from you because they see that you are a proactive company. You know, you're not afraid to be in that space, to have people give you feedback and to address it. It actually puts you in a much better stead and builds up that trust and that relationship element that encourages brand loyalty. Whereas, you know, businesses that just are aloof and don't talk to people are seen as exactly that, you know, and that element of trust. All right, you know, I can rely on this company. There's a company in particular in America that consistently does really well. They are a glasses company, for example, and what they use Twitter for is they're one of these companies where you get your prescription from the optician, and then you send off and they send you 4 example pairs of glasses, and then you take a picture of yourself with all the glasses on, all 4 pairs, and you upload it to Twitter, and people vote as to which pair of glasses you should buy. And this is part of their buying process now, so that Twitter essentially judges which glasses people should buy. And I think that's genius. You know, that whole thing of they are essentially a customerless company. You know, there is no interaction. They have no shops. They're an entirely online brand. There's no way that their customers can go and speak to them. So they're using Twitter in a way as their shop front. And I think that's where, you know, brands can really shine. And as I say, you know, of course somebody's going to come and say, you know, if you're Burger King or whatever, your burgers are shit, I ate your milkshake. Of course people are going to do that. But by actually then addressing it, turning it into a joke, whatever, you know, it makes you a relatable company. There's massive benefits, aren't there? Dali, you look like Ming the Merciless.
Yeah, definitely. I am one of the it's one of the few platforms where a brand can get their personality across. And some of the better brands I've seen are the ones that take a trending topic, something that everyone's talking about. It can be nothing to do with the industry that they're in, just something that the whole world's talking about, which at the minute will probably be the US election. And they shared their opinion on it, or they kind of, you know, share their musings on it. And it's sometimes funny, it's sometimes informative, but either way, it shows that there's human beings behind that brand, and that's what people want to connect with.
Yeah. Absolutely. Liz, just whilst we're talking about brands that do Twitter well, Liz has commented about the fact Liz WhatsApped me at the time that this was going on with the hashtag Aldi 30th birthday party, and it was awesome. It was just all the British brands, supermarkets and others, and some global brands as well, were getting involved. And basically, you know, it was Aldi's 30th birthday, and they were saying to people, "What are you going to bring?" And you know, people were like, people were piping up, like Pepsi was saying, "We'll bring the pop," and you know, Ginsters were saying, "We'll bring the pasties," and all this. You know, it was just like everybody was jumping in. Even Sainsbury's and Asda and stuff were getting involved and talking about what they were going to bring to the party, and it was just brilliant. You know, there's nowhere else that you can get that, and again, that makes you feel so much I don't know, more warmly towards a brand, because you think, actually, you know, they're human. Of course, there's actual genuine people. All right,
Yeah.
yes, probably it's like a 17-year-old lad that they're paying a pittance to, who's having to sit there at home and spend his entire life tweeting on behalf of this massive corporation. But it does, it humanizes them, doesn't it? And there is no other way that would happen. And because it is that kind of instant banter, you just couldn't have that on Facebook. You definitely wouldn't get that on LinkedIn. You'd struggle to do it on Insta, whereas Twitter has this unique place where things like that can happen, isn't it? Dali, you've leaned forward like you're going to say something.
No, I was just listening to what you were saying.
Have we lost him? Dali?
Yeah, I'm still here.
No, I can hear him.
Wake up Wi-Fi, serving as well. Guys, go on then and say it.
Sorry?
It's not even raining. It's a lovely sunny day.
It's not even raining.
I think it's your Wi-Fi, Rich.
Go on, what's your amazing insight about Twitter? I think it's me.
I didn't have one. I was waiting. I was just listening to it. I was just leaning in and listening to what you were talking about. I think you covered the whole thing.
You see, you're doing a Sheryl Sandberg, aren't you? Yeah. Hashtag lean in. Okay, so we've talked about why Twitter is brilliant, what it's good for, how it can help brands, how it can help them connect to their audience. If you were talking to a business about and sort of advising them on what they should do, how they should get on Twitter, what would you be telling them that they needed to do? Because I think one of the things that a lot of people think about with Twitter is, oh, we have to be funny. You know, we can't get on Twitter if we're not quirky, or we're not, you know, we've not got a sarcastic bent or whatever. So how can businesses get on Twitter, Dali?
I'd ask them first of all if they need to. I'd ask them what their objectives are, and say, do you really need to be on this platform? Is it the the right place to put your emphasis? I think it depends. Depends whether we're talking about kind of an acquisition approach, or we're looking to just gain that bit more awareness, or what they want to get out of it. But perhaps just even a case of sharing the same content that they're sharing on their other social platforms to get them going. But yeah, I would probably start off with, do you really need to even be there?
So last time when we were, last week's session was all about blogging and why small businesses should start blogging. And most of Dali's argument was, don't bloody bother. And now today we're talking about Twitter, and most of his argument is, you don't need to be on Twitter. So let's assume you've met with a business and they've said, we really do want to be on Twitter. We have a genuine reason. What would you be advising them to do?
Well, it's going to depend on the business, isn't it? So it depends what the genuine reason is that they're going to want to be on Twitter. And if it makes sense,
reputation management.
If it makes sense and they then have the budget to do it well as well, I think there's and that's what I was saying. There's kind of two different ways of thinking about it. You know, most businesses don't have the time and resource, or the money and resource to really do something like that well. So I think it's a case of working out whether you are going to go for it and make Twitter your main focus. You know, you're going to dedicate somebody's time and resource towards it, or whether you're going to do it as part of your social media strategy, and you accept that it's not going to be it's a string to the bow, but it's not the absolute focus. But I mean, ultimately, it's get on there, get sharing the content that you're creating through I don't know, like blogs and any videos and things that are going on your website, and then start to follow people that are active in your industry and start engaging with them. But it, again, depends on how much time and resource you've got to put into it. So you could just share some posts, and that would be okay. Or you could spend all day and all night talking to different people in your industry
Mm.
and your
I
potential
think,
customers and all the rest of it.
yeah, it's a good point. That one of the ones I do want to come back to in a minute, actually. But in that same HubSpot questionnaire thing that I was research thing that I was talking about before, they looked at what type of content gets the most shares. They looked at it across all of them, but obviously Twitter was one of the platforms, and they were saying that when they analyze what type of content is shared by people engaged with, it is content that is associated with, particularly on Twitter, happiness, silliness, stuff that makes people laugh. That tends to do much better on Twitter. LinkedIn, obviously, although it's, we all know it's slightly more serious, but it's still a social platform. So, but there's scope to be a bit more serious and a bit more business-like and a bit more proper and stuff. Whereas the content that tends to do well on Twitter does tend to be that's more kind of being a bit jokey. Chloe, what do you think about that? Is that when you think about how you use Twitter, are you mostly going to engage with brands that are a bit funny and quirky?
Yeah. Well, I agree with what you were saying then. I think when there's a lot of awful stuff going on in the world, which seems to be the whole of 2020, Facebook in particular can get so disheartening to look at and so negative. And it always starts as like a sad thing and it's coming from a good place, and then it just ends up people just ripping the shit out of each other and just being horrible to each other. And I think Twitter is so much more of a positive environment, no matter what topic it is, or what industry, it is a lot more positive. And brands do kind of jump on that, definitely. And they share positivity, and they do try and kind of capitalize off it, and they'll start maybe a competition or a giveaway or whatever. But it's usually, comes from a place to cheer up 3 followers or something like that. But yeah, it is more of a positive place. And there's been so many times in this past year where I've wanted to come away from Facebook and Instagram because of the negativity, but I not once really thought about coming away from Twitter because it is a much more positive place. And it's also, it's for businesses, it can be such a good opportunity to connect with your customers on a positive level.
I think it's a really, really important point, actually. Facebook, in particular, over the last few weeks, has become quite a toxic place. And you're absolutely right, negative. The other thing that, amazes me, I'm friends, obviously, on Facebook with a lot of people, business people, and they will have a business profile, but they will have their own personal stuff. And people are sharing all sorts of stuff on there. Like, I'm not making judgments on anybody's personal opinions, but I think people have forgotten that Facebook is putting out a representation of your business. Even if it's your personal Facebook, it is still representative of the company that you work for or that you've built. And that seems to be very little. And I know quite a few people recently who've said to me, like, I'm not going to use that company, or I'm not going to use that person anymore, because they've seen what they've been posting on Facebook, and have you seen that the rants, and have you seen, and I do think people need to remember, yes, it's your personal social media profile, but you are still, please don't say anything that you wouldn't say in a business meeting, because it's still represented. Whereas on Twitter, you're absolutely right. It seems that there's not any of that rantiness and the kind of anger and the negative. It is there. I'm not saying Twitter is not a perfect place. If you look at like people like Diane Abbott and the Everyday Sexism Project and Deborah, what's her name? The stuff that they get sent on Twitter is vile.
I was going to say, I think we are looking at a completely different version of Twitter, because the Twitter that I see is pretty toxic, really.
Really? Go on, tell us then. Tell us.
It's absolutely full of, it's all just, mind you, a lot of the stuff that I read is all kind of politics related. So it's all kind of people being snarky and, making comments and calling people out.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it? Isn't it interesting how your perception of it?
Yeah, I have seen a lot of that, to be fair, to Dali. I have seen a lot of that. I've seen it a lot with like going into lockdown and people's opinions on our British politics, but then I've also seen a lot of it with the US election going on at the minute. And I have seen the negativity that Dali's talking about on Twitter. But I think there is always, you know, you get the few comments that are so negative and you get the arguments, but they're always the minority, and there's a sense of kind of like coming togetherness, if you will, whereas on Facebook it's just overrun with negativity, and it's often hard to find the positive in some of the posts that I've seen on Facebook. But again, like I was saying with Instagram, Dali, I think it does depend massively on who you follow and who you're interacting with, and it did get time for me to kind of cull my Instagram and kind of have a good hard look at who I follow it, for sure.
Yeah, you did that on Facebook as well, didn't you, Rachel? Because my feed on Facebook's very positive, to be honest. I don't see very much negativity in there at all. And
because you've created yourself a lovely little echo chamber.
I have, yeah, a little filter bubble.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting. It's
and you're the star of the show.
Exactly. That's how I like to think of my life.
That's how he likes his world. That's exactly his Facebook feed mirrors his world. Simon Daly land.
Yeah.
Everyone's happy. I mean, so I think you're right, and you know, obviously there's going to be good and bad and everything. But one thing I will say, I do think Twitter, as far as one can tell, do seem to work a lot harder. You know, I mean, I know, and it's quite funny now. Literally everything that Donald Trump is tweeting, Twitter are putting this disclaimer on, aren't they? Saying like this content might not be true. So I get the feeling now that Twitter, they were a little bit behind the curve. You know, Facebook did it first, but I do think they're trying really hard to catch up to make the platform a little bit more proactive. And if you're thinking, again, let's bring it back to businesses. If you are a business and you want to get out there, you know, if it's a slightly less toxic platform and it's a place where people are going to be happier, naturally it's a better place for your business to be and grow. Time is marching on, guys. Time is marching on. So just if you were, if a business was coming to you tomorrow and they said, you know, caveat, Simon Daly, they said, we've looked at our case, our rationale for being on Twitter, and we've decided it's good. We've decided we've got the resources to put into it. What type of content would you be advising them to share? Chloe, what do you like seeing on Twitter best? I mean, and here I'm talking like videos, articles. What are you most likely to interact with?
Videos are always great because they kind of stop you in your tracks. I also read quite a lot of articles through Twitter, and obviously go back to people's websites through Twitter. But more often than not, I do just prefer just like tweets, you know, just words. Yeah. Especially, like, obviously articles are accompanied with words, and that's probably the main one. If you're a business, I'd be definitely taking advantage and sharing articles about your business, if you will. But yeah, words. Twitter's a word platform, 100%.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because time and time again, Twitter do this research and say HubSpot do it, Sprout Social do it. What type of content gets the most shares on each platform? And they consistently say, you know, videos that get more views and more retweets and everything else. And obviously, you know, you can't argue with the statistics. But when I'm on Twitter, I'm not really, you know, I'll watch a video if it's particularly interesting. But I prefer, as you say, tweets, like pithy tweets and GIFs and memes. That's what I kind of want to go onto Twitter to find. What do you think, Dali?
I think that I thought that images perform better than videos quite significantly.
I think it overtook it last year. It was infographics was the biggest, yeah. But I think videos.
I think with the rise of TikTok, videos are really, really big now.
I think as well that the change in kind of your mobile technology is contributing towards it as well, because, you know, pictures didn't load, videos would take forever to load, and now everything's quite quick. It will change. It'll naturally change. I think it depends what your audience is going to be looking for. It depends what you're trying to achieve from it. But yeah, anything that's going to drive people back to your website, and equally anything that's going to make people want to follow you. So you know, you're going to be putting out there kind of engaging content that's thematically consistent as well, I would say. So you know, you want to be putting so that your followers know what you're about and come back and are presented with the content that's relevant to them. So I've noticed on my own personal Twitter feed that I think I probably post about kind of marketing and SEO. Say I post about politics, and I post about kind of some history stuff, some ancient stuff, some architecture stuff. Those are kind of my themes that
Sounds
I
thrilling.
like, and kind of social issues, and I can definitely see some people follow me. They start to follow me, and they're in a certain industry, and then they will then unfollow me when I'm going through a phase of posting about a different thing that interests me. So I think that's something that a business needs to be careful about, that they understand what their theme is, and kind of post around that.
It's true, actually. It's a good point. And also, I think people need to be consistent in terms of what they post, but also consistent in terms of the rest of the brand. What I've seen a few people do is, you know, they could be quite a serious brand the rest of the time, and then they go on Twitter and all of a sudden they're, you know, balmy or whatever. And you think, whilst I appreciate that you are tailoring your message to the platform that you're on, which there has to be an element of, you still have to stay authentic. I hate that word, but you have to stay authentic to your overall brand and your overall brand message and tone of voice, haven't you? And not just go wildly off on a tangent on one platform. So it is all about finding that balance, isn't it? Which I think is the tricky thing. Okay.
Yeah, I'd also recommend polls. I think polls are great on Twitter, for businesses in particular. More so, I know Facebook tried with the polls, but I don't think it ever took off quite as well. Whereas I've seen big brands using polls on Twitter to get feedback from customers, and they're also great for interaction. So
yeah, that's it. They have the double
whammy,
don't they? Yeah, double whammy of getting people engaging with you, and you actually find out something. You know, you actually find out what your customers want you to post about, or what they want you to blog about, or what they want you to make videos about, or whatever. So yeah, it is good. Okay, time is marching on. I have 3 questions left. So my first question is my usual question that I always ask. It's my apps and resources question. So if somebody, small to medium business owner, came along now and they said, I really want to start getting into Twitter, where would you send them? Don't say Coventry. So Chloe, where would you tell them to go? Any apps, resources, websites, videos that you've watched, books that you've read, anything that would help people get started, do you think?
Not really. The only app I can think of to use when using Twitter is Bitly, which is the link shortener.
Yeah.
Because obviously you've got a limited word count. But other than that, I think Twitter's a very, very trial and error type of platform.
Do you use it? Do you use it
I imagine
or do you use like Hootsuite or TweetDeck or anything like that?
I used to, in a previous job, use TweetDeck quite a lot, but Hootsuite is definitely the best, I'd say, for scheduling for a business.
Yeah, TweetDeck's just for Twitter though, isn't it?
Yeah. Have you ever used?
Yeah.
TweetDeck is just for Twitter. You always used TweetDeck though, didn't you, Dali? You always used that as opposed to the app. I don't think I've seen you use that as much recently.
Well, I used it until Twitter stopped you posting the same content across multiple. Have I gone? No. Hello.
No, you're here. I can hear you.
Hello.
I used it until we couldn't post the same content on multiple accounts, and then I got bored of it.
Now you just use it native.
No, I do use it in the app on my mobile natively, but I tend to use
Yeah.
Hootsuite when I'm posting between platforms.
Right. Do any of you use #Hashtagify me?
I've not. I was gonna say to look at Spark Toro, Ram Fishkin's kind of social platform, social research tool. It's good. It's got some
Oh, you
good
love
things to
Rand,
say.
don't you?
I do love Rand, absolutely, and I will support him in what he's doing. But no,
Doing.
it is actually really good to easily surface what's going on, and
Yeah.
it's really useful because it's the best thing that I can find out there that's free. It gives you the most data for a platform that's free.
And does that tell you about hashtags as well? Is that
Yeah, it tells you about hashtags and it tells you about social influencers and things like that. It gives you
right?
actual things to target for your brand.
Okay,
It's
that's
really
handy.
handy, actually.
Yeah, #Hashtagify me is good and free, but is that one free as well, Dali?
It's free up to a certain point, but
Okay.
yeah, it gives you a lot in the premium version.
Right. Okay. And I would say as well, just on that, Twitter's own website. If you go to the Twitter website as opposed to the app, they have so many user guides. They have blogs that they give you so much information and guide. Obviously, it's in their best interest that you use Twitter well. So they help you do that quite a lot. I think more so than any other platform I've seen. Although LinkedIn are getting better at that. But yeah, just go to Twitter and there's so much info there that'll point you in the right direction. Or of course, come and talk to Growtraffic. Get that plug in there. So final two questions. I always go around and I like to finish with a top tip. So I'm going to ask you for your top tip first, and then we have the ultimate question. The ultimate question. So Chloe, if a small business came to you tomorrow and they said, we want to get onto Twitter, what would your top tip for them be?
Oh, probably to keep an eye on their industry on Twitter. To go on, even if it's 5 minutes a day, and just see what's going on in their industry on Twitter and get people's thoughts and opinions on what's going on.
Perfect. Thank you, Simon. That's it. Simon Daly, top tip.
Yeah, I think very similar. I'd be saying it's all well and good posting things out on Twitter. Anybody can do that, but in order to make a Twitter account really work, you need to be actively engaging with other people on the platform, and specifically people in your industry who are perhaps leaders in that industry, and they will help. If you can engage them and get them engaged with what you're saying, they will help amplify your content in that industry.
I think again, mine is also very similar. Twitter can be a really, really powerful tool for businesses. It genuinely can, but you have to be prepared to invest the time into it. Just posting a post a day and then not engaging with it at all, it will get you nowhere. So you have to be prepared to be logging in, following other people, engaging with them, sharing their content, pushing yours out a bit further. You've got to invest the time into Twitter. It's fine to just have it. If you've got a Hootsuite account, you get 3 free platforms. If you post into Facebook and LinkedIn anyway, might as well stick it out on Twitter. But it's not going to make you a massive impact. If you want an impact, you've got to be prepared to invest a bit of time into it. So that's it. Thank you so much to all 3 of you. No, there's only 2 of you.
There's
Thank
2
you
of us, there's 1 of you.
Really appreciate your time today. I have one final question. Chloe, is Twitter dead?
No, it's alive and kicking.
Yeah, Simon Daly.
In my opinion, anyway, I think it's great.
Simon Daly, what do you think? Is Twitter dead?
Yes, it's a profit-making zombie.
You know what? I think Twitter's brilliant if used well. And I think there are rumours at the moment that it's on its way back, and I think it just might be. And as we said right at the very beginning, you do not hear Facebook, LinkedIn, none of those others are mentioned every single night on the news channels, whereas Twitter is, and it serves a purpose that no other social media platforms are serving. So if you use it well, it can be powerful, and I don't think it's going anywhere. So there we go. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to everyone for watching. Thank you to Brian and Liz for your comments. Hope you found it useful. If you are watching this on catch up, we do still monitor the chat, so do please put your questions in and we will be more than happy to answer them, or pop us an email, info@growtraffic.co.uk, and we will answer all your Twitter related questions. That's it. It's Friday. Let's all leave. See you next